Super. All right. So we're joined by Elana Frankel tonight, and she has been working above ground in the cannabis industry for the past 7 years. Elana started an e-commerce business, Indigo and Haze, and a garden club. She's developed a product, founded the magazine Women in Weed. She's authored a book with the same title and serves as an advisor for medicalcannabismentor.com. She produces documentaries, writes freelance for various publications, volunteers for the Oregon Cannabis Commission, Health Equity Subcommittee member, consults regularly for companies who value creativity, teaches yoga and meditation with a focus on cannabis, and has even worked as a dispensary associate at the height of COVID. So Elana has also been featured in the media, including CNN, the New York Times, and on various podcasts. Her writing has appeared in the Wall Street Journal, Off Duty, Architectural Digest, New York Magazine, and House Beautiful. She has been an editor at Martha Stewart Living and served as VP Creative at One Kings Lane for more than 5 years when the company was still a startup, developing the brand voice and visual identity. So my previous talk with Elana filled my heart. I walked away beaming because she's an amazing personality, and we're happy to have her here today to share with you about how microdosing and CBD led her on her journey to healing a TBI, or traumatic brain injury. So I don't want to prep it too much. I want you guys to lean in and ask questions, but I'll turn it over to Elana to introduce and tell her story. Elana, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. And I definitely love being here, so much so that I'm up way past my usual bedtime. So thank you, everyone, for motivating me on the West Coast there. Yeah, so that's who I am on paper, but I'm a very different person from the inside out. In the midst of all of this, really at the height of my work at One Kings Lane, I was on a trip to Miami with some girlfriends. I stood up, we were at a restaurant ordering dinner, and we just ordered appetizers, and I stood up and said, I'm not feeling too well. I'm gonna go use the ladies' room. And when I opened my eyes, I was having a CAT scan. So somehow I had fallen, and no one's really sure even to this day if I had a seizure, if I fainted, but I fell. I fractured my skull 4.5 inches in the back. The impact was so dramatic that I then thrusted my head forward and bruised the front part of my brain. I had 2 giant black eyes. And when I woke up and was having my CAT scan, I knew I had the wherewithal to understand that I should stay still because I was having a CAT scan. But it became pretty clear to me shortly thereafter that there was something really wrong. I couldn't speak like that. I was in a lot of pain, not only from what later turned out to be a great amount of swelling in my brain, but also in my back. I had fallen backwards and really bruised my back, so much so I was in an excruciating amount of pain. And I was unable to focus. I was unable to understand when people were speaking with me. If somebody was talking, at me, and someone came in the room and started talking this way, my body, brain, everything just shut down. I was unable to focus when there was light shining on me, when there were loud sounds, any kind of oral, visual stimulation from the smallest to the largest. Again, my body just shut down. And it was clear to me that something was really wrong. And it was clear to my doctors that I had had a traumatic brain injury, and that I was manifesting and looking and sounding like I actually was a stroke victim. I had spent a week in Miami in the hospital, having negotiated, thanks to my mom, who had to fly down and actually interpret and speak for me because I couldn't, negotiated to go back to New York. And when I finally did make it back to New York, I saw a whole bunch of doctors. And when you go to New York, and I'm sure it's in California as well, and West Coast, but especially New York, I feel like when you land in New York and you have some sort of medical issue and you start asking people about doctors, they're like, oh, you have to see my, best friend's nephews who graduated from Stanford, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, wherever it was, and whoever it was, there was a whole litany of neurologists, neurosurgeons, who I went and saw one after the other, and they all said the same thing. You have a traumatic brain injury, your brain is very swollen, you need bed and brain rest until the swelling goes down, and then we can assess what the damage is. And I remember very little, but what I do remember is my husband saying in that one of those meetings, how long was this bed and brain rest? And all the doctors pretty much said the same thing, probably a year, but it could be up to 3 years. And so the reality of having such an injury that would require me to lay down in a dark room without any stimulus for possibly up to 3 years just threw us as a family and me as a human being for a loop. And it was then that it was very clear to me that we had to find an alternative. And after 3 days of bed rest, and I am definitely a type A personality, so when I got to that first day of bed rest and they were like, oh, it's going to take a year, but 3 years, I was like, you know what, I can do this in 6 weeks. Like, just give me 6 weeks, I'll lay down, I'll rest, I'll be good to go, I'll be back at work, blah, 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 blah. It was not the case at all. After 3 days of not being able to even sit still, but let alone rest, my husband came in and said, listen, we've got to find something, an alternative to this. I also had 2 small children at the time. I was a mother, still am a mother, I'm a mother, wife, I had a career, and I needed assistance. I needed help. I needed something to find relief, first and foremost, because I still was manifesting. I was barely I could speak a little bit. I started writing just a little bit, but I still had no speech. I still was in a lot of pain. I still wasn't able to focus, still wasn't able to really process and understand what was happening to me most of the time. And I knew I really needed to find relief, and then I really needed to find healing, and I really needed to relearn. So there were 3 sort of things that I started to feel like I needed to get to. And a couple of days later, my husband came to me and said, hey, I've been doing some research, and I've been online and I found all of this research coming out of Israel where they're using cannabis to help particularly soldiers who have had head injuries from IEDs, and not only with TBIs, but also PTSD. And he was smart enough to start to realize that I was also suffering from PTSD from this experience, and I was showing signs of that. And I remember like putting up my hands and being extremely resistant to the idea of cannabis, especially THC, because I was in no way able to function, let alone get high and think I could function. And so, and you also have to remember, like, this was 7 years ago in New York State, which was a prohibition state. We were way behind in California or Colorado even, or any Oregon. And so when he said to me, no, it's not THC, it's CBD, I was like, I don't know what that is. Like, okay, but what is that? And he started to explain it to me. We started to do some research. We started to talk to a bunch of people. My cousin is a grower in Grants Pass in Southern Oregon. And so we had a lot of connections to people in the industry, cultivators, growers, formulators, extractors. We were lucky in that respect. So we did a lot of research. We talked to a lot of people. And then finally, we decided, okay, this might be something that we want to try, that I want to try. It's a natural anti-inflammatory, and we need to find something. So why not try this? It's getting a little desperate at this point, actually. And so we put the call out. We put the call out to friends, families, and said, hey, here's our situation. Can you help? And the community, came through. They sent incredible amounts of product. But they sent an incredible amount of unlabeled, unmarked product, and everything from topics, tinctures, and tea to vape and flower. I didn't know if it was hemp derived. I didn't know if it was marijuana derived. I didn't know any percentages. I didn't know any terpene. I didn't know anything about it, except that I had called for some help and some relief, and preferably high CBD. And so I did what everybody says to do. I just knew to do it neatly. I started low and slow. I just tried a little bit here and there, tried a little bit of this, tried a little bit of that. And sometimes it was great and sometimes it wasn't. It was a lot of trial and error. It was a lot of success, and then a couple of days later failure, and then a couple of days after that success, and then fail. So it changed, and it morphed. It was a very personal experience. What worked for me, my husband was trying some stuff as well, just to see what it was like. Didn't work for him. And so finally, after about 3 months, I started to find the right protocol, and I started to find relief. I started to feel a lot better. My brain was starting to, I mean, honestly, I could feel the swelling go down. I was starting to feel relief. I was able to communicate, speak a little bit better. I was able to, quite frankly, eat, because part of the challenge for me was I lost my sense of smell and taste. And so eating was very challenging for me. And I started to get the nutrition back. I started to be able to sleep better. And I started to get a lot better. So much so that within about 6 months, I was up and out of bed. And probably like 8 months, I was able to start to go to work slowly, 1 day a week, 2 days a week, 3 days a week, and build up. And I even hesitate to say it like this now, but I healed and found relief with cannabis, and it was great. And I kept going, I kept using, and I kept figuring out what worked and what didn't. But then I quit my job because I had found, I was enlightened. I found this new experience, and I didn't want to stay in this corporate job. And so I left One Kings Lane, and I went straight into the above ground cannabis world, having experienced now the underground part. I just went all out, started a magazine, did a book, started an e-commerce site, was an activist. And throughout this whole sort of period of time, which was probably about 3 years, I continued to improve, continued to find relief, continued to feel better, but I never got past the 90%. I always felt like there was a 10% of me that never quite clicked. My brain still wasn't 100%, but it still hadn't, I still felt like I had lost something and that it wasn't there. I would get tired a lot. I would really the only way I can describe it is I would short circuit. So I'd be going along, I'd be fine. I'd be doing my thing. I'd be like, oh my God, look at me. I'm doing a magazine. Oh my God, look at me. I'm speaking on this. I'm on this bottle. And then all of a sudden I would short circuit and I'd be out for like 3 days. And I didn't really understand what was happening. And I really didn't understand why it was happening. I just knew that there was a piece of me that wasn't quite clicking. And that's when I started microdosing. That's when I started incorporating that into my health protocol. And at the time, I was extremely lucky and very, very grateful to the cannabis community, because at that point, a lot of the people that I had been working with and that I had been friends with, that I had been activists with, were starting to move over into the psychedelic world. We're starting to think about psychedelics. We're starting to make that transition. One woman in particular was really instrumental and spent a lot of time talking with me about microdosing and what that could do and what that experience could be like. And when she started her business, she said to me, why don't you try a month? see what happens. Let's just test it out. And I said, okay. And I started this protocol of microdosing once every 3 days. And I remember distinctly that first time, that first day I took it. It was as if the moment I swallowed it, it was within 20 minutes that I all of a sudden felt whole. I all of a sudden felt connected, and all of a sudden it all aligned and it all clicked. And I felt incredibly calm at the exact same time. It was very subtle. And I had to be highly aware. And I learned very quickly that I had to be highly aware and in tune with what my intention was, but also what I was feeling. Because all of a sudden that alignment and that sort of, connectiveness allowed me to function on the level that I was used to prior to my TBI. And it was at that moment that I realized that this was the missing piece to my healing process. And this was what I needed to get me to the finish line, basically. Thank you, Danielle and Hannah, for those nice comments. And so that was about 2 years ago. And I've been really in the last 6 months, maybe 7-8 months, have been trying different strains and different sort of times of day to ingest. And I've been really sticking to the once every 3 day protocol, but really trying to think about, is it better in the morning? Is it better at night? Maybe some days it's better in the morning. Maybe some days it's better at night. What are my intentions for the day? What are my intentions for the week? What do I have going on that week? What do I need to accomplish? Do I need to accomplish anything? Can I have a day of rest? When will that day of rest be? And I'm trying to organize the healing process with what I'm trying to achieve in life, as well as what my intention for healing continues to be, to look like. And that's where I'm at. I actually started a new strain like 2 weeks ago. And this is the first time where, not that I don't like it, but it's not quite right. So I'm gonna, I think, go back. And it's the first time that I think this is my 4th strain I've tried. And so this is the first time where I've been like, ooh, you know what? This doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel like I'm connected anymore. And I feel good about that. I feel like I have such awareness and I have such a understanding of that subtleness of my body that I can say that out loud and then know that I need to go back. And people always ask me about side effects. They're always like, oh my God, are there any side effects to this? Still a mom, so I'm very concerned about those side effects too. But really the 2 main side effects is, and Hannah and I were just talking about this, or sorry, we were talking about this before. One of the side effects is all of a sudden I started painting. Like I can't stop painting. Like all I want to do is paint. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and I'm just like, just give me like 20 minutes. I'm just going to paint. Or I'm on a Zoom and I'm like, you know what? Just going to turn off this video for a minute. I'm just going to paint. I'm just going to have these watercolor pens. I'm just like, give me 5 minutes. I'm just going to paint. And then the other thing that was interesting to me is that I've been a yoga teacher and a meditation teacher since 2001. I've been practicing forever. And after the TBI, I was really challenged by yoga, particularly practicing in a hot setting didn't work for me anymore. I was able to do forward bends and any sort of inversion going this way, but anytime I put my head back, I got vertigo, like really bad vertigo. And so I was very nervous, especially with PTSD. I just didn't want to, but I had to exercise. I had to get out there. And all of a sudden, I started microdosing and I started running. I've never really been a runner. I don't know why I'm running, but I just wake up in the morning and I'm like, I'm going to go running for a couple miles today. And I just started running and I'm really enjoying it. I'm outside. It's really nice. Yeah, it's been an unbelievable sort of side effect that all of a sudden I'm a runner. So yeah, that's really, yeah, that's really who I am. Yeah, backwards movement in yoga is horrible. The comment there that's up in the chat. And I wasn't expecting it because when I first went back to practicing and when I first went back into a class, I actually felt great. I was doing downward facing dog, I was doing headstands, I was doing all of this incredible balancing. And then all of a sudden I did camel and I just lost it. I just, I just suffered from vertigo really, really badly. The horizon just went like that. And it was really actually quite scary because I had never experienced vertigo before. So I had to sort of figure out a way to keep my body moving without yoga anymore. I still teach and I'm still able to practice, but I practice not in a class setting. I practice on my own. I practice and have my own series of poses that I do that are good for me and my body and where I'm at. So yeah, that's me. I feel like I've been yapping. Any questions or any conversations or anything anybody wants to talk about TBIs, about my experience? Maybe anybody has had an experience themselves. I'd love to hear about their experience, brain injury. Anything?
I have a question. So were you microdosing with psilocybin?
Yes, I am. And the company is called Flow State. Lulu's an incredible formulator and human being. And and it's a very small dose. It's a very small dose, actually, just the right amount.
Hi, I'm Jennifer. I'm sorry, my dogs are running through here like 2-year-old children, but I don't have my video on. But I'm a nurse and I do. It's funny because I do rehab and I do also hospice in the nursing field, which are two extremes. But it's amazing from a TBI from that magnitude that you were able to heal that quickly. From a nursing view, because I've seen TBIs and even when they come to rehab, they have to wait at least over a year before they can even begin to start speech therapy, physical therapy, things like that. So I have to ask, because I work with some TBI, I work with a lot of Parkinson's patients. How would you recommend the cannabis route or microdosing route when you're dealing with any kind of brain injury? And I mean just from your experience and from what you've seen, because it's interesting to me which route you would go, because I would think microdosing would be more of a brain injury, better almost than cannabis would be.
Yeah, and that's why I was so reluctant when we first started talking about cannabis because of the THC. But what I had come to realize is that the CBD was the anti-inflammatory,
Right?
and I needed to get the swelling down. I couldn't do anything until I got the swelling down.
Right.
And as you know better than I, the standard practice is bed and brain rest to get the swelling down. And that's what takes so much time. And so for me, the CBD, I don't want to say sped it up, but it moved it along, I think at a better pace and a pace that I wanted it to. And then once the swelling went down and I realized like what the long-term effects were, then the psychedelics became the part of the process that helped. Does that make sense?
100%, because you have to start with inflammation before anything. So that's interesting. It's like it's like the cart before the horse kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a great way of thinking about it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And and the challenging part for me at that time, I do have a doctor now that is a cannabis and psychedelic doctor, but at the time, 7 years ago here in New York, the idea of this was so like cuckoo crazy. Even telling a doctor, even telling friends, even telling my mom, like they looked at me like I was nuts. So I didn't really talk about it. I didn't really tell anybody what I was doing. I just did it. And, I felt comfortable from a safety point of view from cannabis and from psychedelics because I knew that nothing was going to happen to me. I wasn't scared that there was going to be an overdose or that I was going to do more damage. I knew from what little at that point education I had about cannabis that it was medicinal, that it had healing power, blah, 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 blah. So I wasn't scared, but I definitely knew that I needed an alternative. I definitely knew I wanted it to be all natural, but I definitely knew that I first needed to deal with this swelling.
Exactly. And that's what's sad. I'm in Arizona, I'm in Phoenix, but I have one hospice doctor. I mean, nobody wants to discuss. When I bring it up, people are so uneducated about it, even today.
Yeah.
More rehab doctors are actually, I've had some rehab doctors that I've discussed it with that know a little bit, but nobody knows the benefits I think that people can get from it. And especially being in Arizona right now, I know we're near everything, but trying to get a hold of things so people can try things, especially my doctor on hospice is very into like CBD, THC. And now that we can get things medicinally in Arizona, it's a lot easier. So from a hospice standpoint, we do a lot of that. We do a lot of that with our patients and stuff. So we call it a supplement though. So the doctors don't feel like their license is on the line, which is sad.
Yeah. But I get it. Listen, I completely get it. The lack of education and understanding is a big barrier for sure.
Yeah. So I appreciate you speaking because I think, your education and knowledge is tremendous. And I hope the word gets out. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think the reason why I enjoy conversations like this and connecting with people is, this storytelling and anecdotal evidence and this connection to people is what really, hopefully, I mean, you see it with cannabis, but hopefully is going to spur people to actually do the research and really look at data and really start to be open to these ideas because of stories like mine. I'm very, very lucky. I'm extremely grateful. And I am so happy to be alive, quite frankly, and functioning as well as I am. But it was hard work to get here. And it was really kind of scary a lot of times. So I just want to make sure that the word gets out, but that the reality is there as well. There's a question here. Do you feel that microdosing with shrooms helped you with speech? That's a really good question. I don't know if it specifically helped me with speech, but it definitely helps with language and it definitely helps with processing. So the sort of the connection between the brain and the physical action, it tightened that connection. And yes, you could say that my mouth is moving, the brain is working, so that, it helped. I don't know. That's a really good question. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm the one who typed it in.
Oh yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, with me, it's difficult to converse with people. So I've only done like a couple of full trips and I'm starting to microdose, but I was just wondering what you were saying, like, has it helped you with like cognitive processing and being able to respond back to someone in a conversation?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. That when you have a TBI, that sort of like 15-second lag that feels like 3 hours that you
For
have.
me, honestly, sometimes it's like 1 to 2 weeks later where I'm like, oh, I get what the person said to me. And then they can't remember
I know.
the conversation to begin with. So I'm like, okay, it's had an impact on my social life. So I'm like,
Oh,
okay.
hell yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
babe, I've been there. I've been there with you. Like, I get it. I get it. I get it.
When
My
you were
kids-
talking about strands, were you talking about strands referring to shrooms, or
Yeah.
how did you find different strands? Like, because I always just get it.
Yeah, flow state. Lulu's got them. You know, she's a great, she's, like I said, she's a great formulator, and she's got different strains going.
Wait, it's called flow state?
Flow state. Yep. And I can, let me see. You know what? They're on Instagram. Just go to Instagram.
Okay, go to, it's FOW.
Let me see it. Let me just make
Yeah,
sure.
sorry.
It's on Instagram. Yeah. Yeah, Lulu's the best. It's Flow State Micro.
Okay. Okay, yeah, because I'm like, I've only got it from like a local person. I didn't realize that you can get strands of it.
They're
Yeah,
different.
and it makes a difference with the outcome.
Oh, I was not skeptical, but I was sort of like, you know, I've recreationally, you know, tripped before. So the idea of, oh, thanks, Hannah, for putting that in the chat. The idea of there being different strains, just like cannabis strains, was sort of like amazing to me.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and yes, they're different outcomes. Some of them are very similar, but like I said, the one I just tried, this fourth one that I tried, really did not agree with me. Oh, and the other thing I will say is when I first started 2 years ago, it was at the height of, you know, COVID. We were all sort of like, you know, we still are, but going a little cuckoo. And I was taking vitamin D drops at the time, and the combination of microdosing the mushrooms and the vitamin D made me vomit. And as soon as I stopped the vitamin D, I was fine.
Oh, you said it didn't go well together?
No, I vomited.
Oh, okay.
Just a side note.
I go in the sunlight. That's vitamin D, right?
Yeah, so that's just me. You know, that was just me. But I always say that because, you know, some people get nauseous when they take it. And I was like, "Are you taking vitamin D?" And sometimes they say, "Yeah." It's like, just try no vitamin D and see what happens.
Okay, I wrote that down. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Gives a bit of hope.
Have I ever tripped? Yes, I have. And you know, when you trip in your 20s and then when you trip in your later life, it's a very different experience. And so my later life trips are so much fun because they happen in bed. I'm like, I don't have to move. I don't have to go anywhere. I'm not in the desert. I'm not like dancing around. Like, it's none of that. I'm laying in bed under my incredibly beautiful like linen duvet. Got my arms like this. Happens all the time. My fingers start to tingle. That's when I know I'm about to go down a wormhole. I have a vision. I come back up and I'm like, oh, hi. And then my hands start to tingle. I go down the wormhole. I have my vision. Like, that's my later in life tripping, and I love it. And I never have to leave my bed. Nobody's bothering me. I don't have to feel like, oh my God, where am I going to end up in the morning? Nope. And it's great. And I love it. So yes, I've tripped. How soon after TBI did you start cannabis? I started cannabis probably within 4 to 6 weeks after my TBI. I started CBD. You know, I did, because I got product that was not labeled, I did have some higher THC stuff at the beginning that freaked me out. And so I kind of did it and then stopped because I just needed to just take a little tolerance break. And then I went back and did more of the tea and tinctures than the flower. And then when did I start? So I started the microdosing about 2 years ago. So there was a couple of years in between the CBD and the microdosing. I wish I had discovered microdosing. Now that I know what it's like and how it's helped me, I wish I had experienced it earlier in my healing process, but I didn't have access to it until about 2 years ago. Does your TBI recovery mainly benefit from microdosing, or has larger trips helped you? Honestly, it's microdosing. The microdosing has helped not only in the physical healing and in the brain, but also with my PTSD, because there were many months where I was constantly living in fear of falling because there was no definitive reason from a doctor of why I fell. The unknown, I just, if I like fell, or if I tripped, or if I stubbed my toe, or any sort of unbalance, I just would shut down. And the microdosing really helped me to sort of get out of that, get out of my head and release that, I think, more than anything else. Yeah.
So they didn't see any stroke or anything once your brain swelling went down?
So they didn't see a stroke at all. What
Yeah.
they saw was me, no one could really explain it to me, because I was manifesting as if I had a stroke, but I didn't have a stroke. I fell and hit my head. And I think what they were trying to figure out is why I fell.
Right. That's why I was wondering if maybe you had like a little TIA or something. And then
Yeah, which definitely could have been. At first, they thought it was epilepsy, because epilepsy runs in my family. So I was on a lot of anti-seizure medication for a while, but it wasn't epilepsy. And then they thought I fainted, and then they thought I fainted, and then once I hit my head, had a seizure. It really is still unknown to this day. Yeah, so yeah, there was no evidence of a stroke, but I manifested like it. I looked and sounded and felt like it. The link to Lulu the Flowsuit goes to a place for buying mushrooms without the active ingredient. Oh, well.
Alana, I have a question for you.
Yeah, Rachel, hold on. Rachel, she's just direct messaging me. You can get my email. We'll talk offline. We'll do it offline.
Yeah, Rachel has her hand up. So I was just going to say, Rachel, if you want to come to the stage and unmute yourself, feel free.
Yeah, she's direct messaging me here in the chat.
Wonderful.
So yeah,
Hi.
Yeah.
I'll get you guys to.
Oh, no, thanks. And I'm sending you a separate message, or maybe you can answer this question.
Sure.
With TBI, you can also, your hormones can be affected because of the shear forces on the pituitary, especially with the contra coup injury that you had. And little tangent, I want to say thank you for your story and who you are. I also have medical experience in rehab. So this is a big deal, and not just for brain injuries of your mechanism of injury, but all types. But I wanted to ask you if they ever, so I back to my story, pituitary, and then I, at a fairly early age, late 30s, 40s, started having some hormone issues, thyroid, progesterone, et cetera, et cetera. We got an MRI, and I was diagnosed with a partially empty cella. In other words, my pituitary volume was 3 millimeters instead of 8. And it was interesting. Even at the time, I strangely was intuitively drawn to taking courses on prescribing hormones, But I think there's a lot more knowledge about brain injuries and hormones right now, but I don't know if they had that knowledge when you had your injury was 7 years ago. Now I've had some chronic health problems because I've banged my head a few too many times and in sports, and that's a very important part of the history if you're getting an intake with a functional medicine doctor, and they're finding that earlier onset of dementia, all sorts of links with TBI. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I find that, thank you for that information. No one had ever had that conversation with me. So
Just
Just making
checking what
it up.
you could, like, if a person were to do an internet search, the things you would ask for thyroid testing, don't let them only give you a TSH. I hope I'll be real direct, or we could do it offline if you want. Maybe I should do it offline. Yeah.
Okay.
Or we could talk as
Yeah.
anyway, I'm going to disappear with the video, but just
Thank you.
awesome presentation, amazing story, it's a real inspiration. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for your information there. That's something that no one had sort of spoken with me about. And again, like you said, it was 7 years ago. And I had very traditional neuroscientists and neurologists looking at me. Yeah, I like that. I'm so sorry, sir. I've completely forgotten your name, but your hand is raised up. You have a little pink shirt on. Is that pink? I don't know.
I had two questions. Can you talk about how you determined your starting dose and how long it took you to take your sweet spot in dosage? And then were you stacking with CBD? And I couldn't tell if you're still doing the CBD.
Yeah, really good question. I am still doing the CBD, and I probably will never stop. I shouldn't say that, but I don't foresee myself stopping. The CBD, I have other issues that the CBD has helped with and continues to help with, including is somebody not muted?
Can I get to the dishes before?
Okay. The CBD and now CBN is helping me with sleep. And a lot of the TBI issue, the healing process while the cannabis and the microdosing helped immensely. What they also provided me with was a good night's sleep, which was really important, which I was not getting. And as I said, helping me with my appetite and nutrition and eating, because I lost my sense of smell and taste. It was very challenging for me to eat and understanding what my relationship to food would be. So these things have helped and continue to help. So I don't think I'll stop. I might lower the dosage, change the dosage. I might not be taking it every day. I might be taking different intake forms. I might be changing the protocol, but I feel like it'll always be a part. The sweet spot of the microdosing. So I basically have been taking the exact same amount, the same amount of days for 2 years. I have not changed it. I take one pill every 3 days. For that first day, I get the effects. For the second day, I get the afterglow. And the third day, my body resets. It works for me. It has worked for me, so I haven't changed it. If I macrodose somewhere in between there, I might change it, but I definitely feel like the standard amount, which is the smallest amount that Flow State makes and formulated, worked for me. And I was lucky that way. I didn't have to sort of think about, and trial and error in other ways. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And then do you take breaks then? I know some of the
tolerance breaks. So I have mixed feelings about tolerance breaks. For me personally, I take them only because I want to understand where my body is at. And so I'm constantly thinking about when to stop and for how long to stop. I don't really go for more than 2 weeks of stopping, and I don't stop both the microdosing and the CBD at the same time. I'm either doing one or the other at all times. But I definitely take a break. I don't recommend that for everybody. I'm at a point right now where I can take a tolerance break. People who are suffering from chronic issues, people who feel like they need it in a way that allows them to function on a daily basis. They don't have the luxury of a tolerance break. I would say I'd rather have a conversation with a health practitioner, a cannabis doctor, a doctor who works with psychedelics, to be able to change dosage or think about different protocols rather than just, breaking from it. What is the way you usually take the CBD? Oh my gosh, it changes a lot. At first, because I was so used to flower, because I'm old and I smoked joints when I was a kid, like that's how I originally just sort of was drawn to it. It was flower and rolling. But then I got introduced to tinctures, which really helped me a lot. Tea, because I'm a tea drinker. I love the ritual of tea. I love ritual of tea making. I felt very comfortable, and I felt very, I slowed down. I made the tea through this incredibly beautiful ritual of making the tea, music. It really helped me. So tea has been a great intake method for me. I'm not an edibles person. I don't like the long, it takes too long for the onset. Dosage has always been an issue with edibles for me, so I tend to stay away. Yeah. How long is your break of microdosing normally? About two. I usually 2 weeks. I usually can go 2 weeks without it, and then I sort of miss it. I miss the feeling of being together. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your inspiring story.
Oh my
I
God.
would
Thank you
love
for
to
listening to the
hear
conversation.
if you have any inspiration or wisdom in addition to the microdosing. Were there any other practices or tools that you use to stack with microdosing or support your process, whether it's oxygen therapy or writing, or I know you mentioned yoga. I'm curious to hear other
I'm a
tools.
meditator, and I do a lot of breath work. Breath work has been and has always been my savior. It is an incredibly useful tool in times of duress, stress, distress. It calms the mind, it calms the heart, calms the nervous system. It's a very natural and easy, quick way to gain control over your situation, whether it's a body, breath, mind, spirit moment. So that's always has been a strong, it comes first, actually, no matter what, it comes first, breath work. Yeah, I think that's been, I've always, Reiki and acupuncture, and I have friends who do all this and who I see and who practice on me, and I work with them, and it's all great, but I am really more drawn to the sort of internal, my own personal working. So the breath work, the microdosing, and the cannabis has really been my saviors. And I will say, I've said it, I keep repeating myself, but I really am a big believer in sleep and nutrition has also been very, very helpful. So as I said, I lost my sense of, one of the side effects is the front of my brain, I bruised so much that I lost my sense of smell and taste has come back a little bit, but I still have no sense of smell. I just can't smell a damn thing, nothing. And that made eating really challenging and unpleasant for a long time. And so to sort of get back into the pleasures of food and the pleasures of eating really helped. That and getting my appetite better really helped with the process. Yeah. Is there a name for the type of breath work that you do? I do a three, this is like the craziest thing, but I simply do a 3-part breath. I have a very, it's just a deep inhale from the chest, belly, rib cage, and the back of the body where the whole trunk expands when you inhale. And then you exhale, you concave the belly button to the spine. I usually do a 4 count for the inhale and an 8 count for the exhale. I do that sitting, I do that standing, I do that walking, I do that laying in bed at night. And it helps immensely. And that's all I do. There's no, I've tried all different kinds of breathing, in yoga, I mean, there's tons of it. And a lot of it works and a lot of it is great, but I always am drawn to the simplest of answers. And the 3-part breath is what really works for me. No, I'm not microdosing for 3 days and then taking a few days off. So it's, with flow state, you get a 30-day supply. So you take it one day, which is your day of intake. Then you have an afterglow day and then a reset day. And then the 4th day, you take it again. Then you have your day, you have your afterglow day, you have your reset day, then you take it again. And that's for a 30-day supply. Does that make sense? The question there about. Oh, do I have any interesting scientific reports? I mean, for TBI and microdosing. So I work with a cannabis doctor here in New York, Dr. Janella Chin. And if you Google her, she's an incredible human being. She actually lived in California and worked in California for years. And she and I, like I said, have been working together, not only with cannabis, but also with microdosing. And she's a great inspiration. She's a great scientific mind and a medical mind, functional and integrative medicine as well. And she really, all of her work, all of her data, all of her writings have been shipped off to Israel for research. So she really has a lot of information, and she's a great resource and a great person to consult with and talk with and have appointments with. Also, the other one is Dr. Julie Holland here in New York as well. She's really, really amazing. So here, Dr. Janella Chen is here in New York. And then Dr. Julie Holland, also in New York. Dr. Holland is a psychiatrist. She works a lot with PTSD, psychedelics, and she's written. She actually has a new book out. I just want to remember what her new book is because I haven't. And she super smart, super crazy smart. Like, let me just see what her book is called.
Ilana, I'm curious. I know you're looking that up, but
Yeah.
I'm wondering what inspired you to write your book, Weed and Women.
Ah, yes. Let's just see what this is. Also, side note, for TBI, Google is amazing. If you can't remember anything, like people don't talk about that enough, that like for TBI software, Google's like the most amazing thing. I love it. Good Chemistry. That's what it's called. Good Chemistry. Right. It's called Good Chemistry, the Science of Connection from Souls to Psychedelics. Yeah, it's great. She's amazing. So sorry, I think I just sent that that Dr. Janella Chin and that to a direct. Hold on, let me send it to everybody. Sorry about that. Rachel, I just sent that to you. Sorry about that. Why it's not coming up to everybody? Okay, there we go. So Dr. Julie Holland. Okay, so when I started feeling better and I started going back to work, you know, I had had an awakening. It really was a definite sort of, you know, part of it was, you know, you could be living your life and all of a sudden you could fall and die. And part of it was, you know, life is precious. You know, you've got to do your thing and go. But also part of it was, you know, I had this experience where, you know, the universe knocked me over the head literally and said, wake up, like there's more to life than, you know, what you're doing. And I loved what I was doing, but I had come to the understanding that there was a greater, something bigger at work in the universe than just, you know, being a creative director. And this was a much more fulfilling, and this was a much more, you know, storytelling, anecdotal, you know, all of the things that I'd been working on, and healing, and my yoga practice and meditation and teaching. And so when I sort of quit my job and came home that day and said to my husband, hey, I want to go into cannabis, you know, the natural sort of thing for me to do was, because my work had been in magazines and writing and producing and content for so long, was easily, you know, transitioning into a magazine. And I really wanted to focus on this topic of women in weed, because as we mentioned before, with hormones, you know, plant-based therapeutics affects women very differently than it does men. You know, based on our hormones, based on ages and stages, you know, based on when we're having our periods, there are all these different things that, you know, create a different environment for plant-based therapeutics. And most of the research for all farm is done either with men or male mice, basically. And so I really wanted, at the time, it was very clear to me that as cannabis was being sort of touted as this medicinal and frankly wellness product, it was very clear to me that it was going to be consumed by women very, very quickly, particularly CBD, as we've seen of the incredible amount of CBD that's out there now between, you know, beauty products and, you know, teas and tinctures and all of these things. It was very much in women's sort of DNA as natural healers, as like, you know, these 17th century root healers. It's deep in our DNA that it was going to affect women. And so, and if you looked at the newsstand at the time, you know, there was High Times, and it was, you know, boobs, babes, and bongs. And it was, you know, the sort of like thrasher culture, which is great and has its, you know, place. But I really wanted to open up the dialogue to include women and to include all the women who are in the industry who are doing great work. And so when I went to the publisher and pitched this idea, it never occurred to me in a million years that a man would be like, yeah, sure, let's try it. But he did. And we put together 3 issues, very successful, sold out. Copies were on newsstands all across the country in outlets I never thought would ever see, you know, not only a magazine called Women in Weed, but also a magazine called Women in Weed that was pink with a big green pot leaf on it. And then after the 3rd issue, Simon & Schuster came and said, hey, you know, we really want to start to produce cannabis books, but we're a little nervous. So we want to test out the market with your content. We're going to take the 3 issues, put them together into a book. You know, you can write the forward and update some of the content. And we did, and the book came together, and of course was released on the day the world went into lockdown. So all of the sort of, you know, marketing and great plans of book tours and all that stuff went bye-bye. But the book has done really, really well. We've sold a whole bunch on Amazon. We've sold a whole bunch on Indigo and Haze, my website. So I've been really lucky in that it's been really well received, despite the fact that marketing has been a little bit wonky. But I think it's because of this great, you know, resurgence of of women coming into the industry, but also really interested in plant-based therapeutics and plant-based protocols. And also there's a lot of women working in the industry who never get to see the light of day because there's no outlet for them to talk about what they do or who they are or their stories of how they got there. And I think for me, storytelling has always been the great connector. And so, one of my greatest joys was a whole bunch of men came up to me and were like, we buy Women in Weed, and we pretend it's for our wives or girlfriends, but we read it because the information is great, but also because it gives us a different perspective of what the industry not only is doing, but what it can be. So that's the sort of long answer to that. Can I type? Yeah. So the website is Indigo and Haze, and yeah, and that's Indigo and Haze on Instagram. And then you can see all my crazy watercolors that I can't stop doing on Instagram at Seen and Noted. Do you consider microdosing for TBI can create any risks? Yes. I mean, listen, yes, there are definite risks. I think there are risks to any sort of thing that you put into your body. And you have to be really clear and really open with your health practitioners, with your doctors, with your trusted health partners of what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I think that's the sort of thrust of my whole experience is about intention. And my intention has always been healing, and my intention has always been relief. My intention is not, tripping. My intention is not recreational. There's a time and a place for it. I'm not saying that there isn't, but for me with my TBI, it was all about being very intentional about my healing. And so that is why I started low and slow. That is why I now consult with doctors and talk to people and really get, my information, because yeah, there are definitely risks for everything. And so you really need to focus on that. Biological, I mean, I'm not a doctor, so, what could those risks be? Your body is going to react the way it's going to react to things. I know there's dizziness, there's fatigue, there's dehydration, there's balance issues. There are things that your body can react to. So yeah, you just have to be very mindful. You have to start low and slow, and you really have to make sure that the product that you're working with is from a reputable, very regulated, very good source, and have open dialogue with your doctors at all times, and find the doctor. And if you are serious about microdosing, if you are serious about cannabis as a therapeutic, it's important to partner with a doctor who also believes it, to have that conversation. What else? Anything else?
Hi, I'm Josie. I just wanted to thank you for sharing, and I wanted to say
Thank you.
Your TBI, all TBIs are very severe even without a crack. I feel like your healing was so quick, maybe so you could get the message out faster with your
Love that. Thank you.
Yeah, I really feel that, because I feel like everybody has this timeline when they have TBIs where it's like you're planted, you're in the ground, you're in the darkness, literally in the darkness. There's no solutions, there's not enough money, whatever it might be. You don't have your career anymore, you don't have your friends. And then it becomes the rebuilding phase. And for me, I'll be 30 in January. I've been chronically sick since I was 20 years old when I graduated from Berkeley. And I thought my life was just gonna begin, and I was gonna be living in San Francisco with a tech job and making money, and that's gonna solve all my familial trauma and life's gonna be great. But a lot of people started asking about risks. And what I have to say to that, in my experience, is I had to try so many different things, and everything had a risk associated with it. I went to one of the best brain injury doctors in San Francisco, and he does brain rehab. And I went there for about a month, and he's $150 per half hour. And it was like my last resort. Prior to getting my TBI, I had autoimmunity, my first TBI. So I already had Hashimoto's. I was really sick. I was given a vaccine while I was sick. I got more sick. I know that's controversial, can't talk about that. But yeah, I got more sick after getting that. And then I got my first TBI, then I got my second TBI. And I go to this guy, and it seemed like none of the therapies and exercises worked because I still had high amounts of inflammation in my body. And the longer you wait to deal with it, the more problematic the TBI is. And my nervous system was so messed up because I had lost so much and I was so traumatized that nothing really works when your nervous system is just out of whack. So when you're talking about breath work, it really resonated because like I felt like when I had nothing, at least I could breathe and turn on a meditation and try to regulate myself. If I didn't have the money for therapies, or I didn't even know who to go to or who to trust, then I could resort to that. So like I went to functional doctors, I went to naturopathic doctors. They would work for me with, for 8 months, and then they say, oh, sorry, we can't help you anymore. And I had already spent a bunch of money. I went to the brain doctor, right? And then I'm working with him for a month. And then he's like, I think you really have an infection. Then I finally do the expensive testing, and I found out I have Lyme disease. And the Lyme is in my brain. So the way I have not done microdosing, I'm looking at it as I've reduced the inflammation. I'm getting better sleep finally. I've changed my diet. And now I think it's my nervous system that's still dealing with the trauma that's preventing me from healing. And on the other hand, with CBD, even if it has small amounts of THC, my body hurts when I have THC.
Yeah.
I feel all the parts in my body that have injuries. I feel them. They're like on fire. So it just, everything will work differently in every person. And I think that everybody needs to understand that a lot of it is experimental in some sense. Yeah, so I really look forward to going on this next step. I'm not ready to trip. I'm not strong enough to trip right now, and I can acknowledge that.
And you don't have to. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You don't have to. That's not, it's not what it's about. And I will say what I really connect with your story is that with TBIs, it's the strangest phenomenon walking through life when you finally heal on the outside, but you're not healed on the inside. And to interact with the world that looks at you as you're healed. Oh, you look great. Oh, look at you. You look great. Mm-hmm. And to be able to say, but I'm not, is really, unless you're having a conversation with somebody who knows, it's people dismiss it, or they don't believe it, or they don't know how to interact with it.
Well, so if you're well-spoken and you're educated and you decently are put together and you're an attractive person, people don't take you seriously. They will send you to neuropsychology, and if the MRI comes back with nothing, or the CT scan comes back with nothing, they'll say there's nothing to be seen here. But we cannot see micro tears, right? And also with us trying to quantify what does microdosing do, it does it on the micro level with repair and the dendrites in the brain. And there's so many, studies out there. So it's really exciting. And I've had this experience because I took a lot of organs. So I take desiccated thyroid. I said I had Hashimoto's before. Then I got painful periods after the TBI as well, excruciating. I had a kidney infection. I had got kidney disease. All these organs were failing. I started taking desiccated organs like they do in Chinese medicine. Then finally, I took desiccated brain. I could feel my brain changing. And for some people, that's really scary, but I had to invite it that I cannot go back to the way I was. So my intention cannot be to go back to my original brain. It no longer exists.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an incredible story. My other thing I wanted to do was basically start AA for TBIs. I just wanted there to be just AA groups instead of talking about alcohol, you're just talking about your TBI.
Yeah, there are support groups in the Bay Area, but I was already going to Al-Anon. So for my alcoholic parents, so I can't go to another support group. My sponsor.
You're good. You're on the right track. I like it.
I think I got the basics done with this
Yeah.
spiritual growth. I don't need to be part of it. I could be in a Hashimoto support group. I can be in Lyme. On Facebook, I'm in all the groups, and I find that similar treatments reduce your inflammation, reduce your trauma, reduce the toxicity.
And trauma, I think that's the other thing that resonated with me. I think that the trauma is not spoken about enough. It's real and it affects you physically for sure.
Well, the medical trauma, and then also all of a sudden, I don't trust any of the systems.
Yeah. Oh, look. The entrepreneur is already supporting the TBI psychedelic support group. I love it. I can't be held responsible for anything I said at 10:17 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Ask me again tomorrow if I want to do that when I've had a good night's sleep. What else?
I think that would be such a powerful offering if you ever wanted to pioneer that.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Marguerite has her hand up.
Thank you. I want to thank Elana and Jyoti. I had my head injury so long ago that I never even thought about it. I got diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder like other people's stories. And I ended up going to acupuncture school more than 20 years ago. And that got me part of the way there. And a lot of the things I've done have gotten me part of the way there. And in the last year, I had this situation where I started working with conscious cannabis. And during one of the conscious cannabis journeys, the irritability increased. And that's one of the unspoken symptoms of TBI is irritability for no reason and irascibility even for some people. And I feel unbearable to myself. And so I had a session with a medical intuitive who reminded me that I had never addressed my TBI. And so when I saw your workshop come up, this talk today, it made sense why I've got a bunch of powder saved up of psilocybin. And I'm like, oh, so thank you. You know, it's layers, Jyoti. For all of us, it just comes out in layers and layers. I don't know that it ever ends, but I sure appreciate us trying to help each other. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's so important to address it because if the muscle memory in your brain's a big old muscle, and that muscle memory sticks with it, and it'll keep gnawing at you until you acknowledge it.
Well, one of the gifts of cannabis, as some of people know and maybe others don't, is that it's a somatic medicine. And a lot of the others work on other levels. And being somatic, it will bring up the issues we have in our bodies for us to release them. And I like the concept of dross from alchemy. That's what we're trying to clear. And so I started to realize that, and the cannabis isn't enough for me, I'm seeing. And so I really wanted to just thank you so much because this is a gift in the right timing for me. I've got a few weeks by myself.
That's the best gift for me. Oh my God, I love that. I will say though that something that you mentioned just now sparked something in that, you know, I've had conversations with lots of folks and people who are microdosing, but also with doctors. And one of the things that keeps coming up is that when you microdose, it amplifies what's already there. So a lot of the time, it's not that you microdose and all of a sudden you're a different person. It actually just rises to the top what is already there and that what you have to deal with. And some of it's good and some of it's challenging. And so I think for me, when I first started microdosing, what first came up was the good stuff. Like I felt like connected and I felt tight and I was painting and I was running and I was like, oh my God, I feel like human again. I'm at 100% like capacity. But as I've moved through my journey, there are some moments where on that first day of the 3 days that I'm taking it, that, the sticky, icky stuff comes up that I haven't acknowledged, that I need to acknowledge, that I need to, and it's, it's what's there. And I think that's part of the microdosing process too.
I've identified those kinds of days as days that I'm not fit to be in society, so I stay home.
Society thanks you.
They're welcome.
Do you think that people with TBI have to take any special care for microdosing? Yeah. Again, I think as we mentioned, all of these natural remedies, all of these plant-based therapeutics it's so personalized. And if you have any other underlying issues besides the TBI, yes, you might have to take different care than you would if you just are suffering from one thing. And if you're a person who's just suffering from one thing, then God bless you, because I don't know anybody who's just suffering from one thing. But I think that there needs to be a very, it's personalized, it's very custom, it's very personal to you and what you're doing and what you have and what your needs are. So, I take what the standard is for this and it works for me, but it doesn't for everybody. Oh, lion's mane, yeah. So, okay, like many other people, I watched the movie Fantastic Fungi, and like with my kids and my husband, and within 20 minutes I was on Amazon buying like $7,000 worth of like lion's mane and all the other tinctures and mushrooms and all of this and all of that. I think lion's mane has been I've been dabbling with it. I haven't really done anything more than just try to work with it a little bit into my protocol. I haven't found the right way to do it. I started with tincture, and then I also found a local purveyor, somebody who has it, grows it, and will sell it. So I put it in food, and so far I prefer it that way, but I haven't quite found the way. But yeah, I've heard great things and continue to hear great things. And no, I have not looked into, what is it, Bredesen protocol? No, I haven't, but no, I will. Bredesen protocol. Yeah, of course, Rachel. I'd love to hear everybody's story. I love a good story. I'll put in this is my email. About nutritional protocol. Okay, so I'm extremely lucky, and my sister is a registered dietitian, exercise physiologist, and a wonderful nutritionist. And so when I first had the TBI and lost my sense of smell and taste, I laugh about it now, but I called her and I said, oh my God, guess what? I I can't smell, I can't taste. So here comes the moment where I'm going to eat all greens. It's going to be kale and it's going to be, broccoli and celery. It's going to be all green and it'll be all healthy. And I remember she was like, okay, good luck with that. And then after like a week of eating all greens, I was like, I feel terrible. Like, I just am not happy. Like, my husband's like, you're in a bad mood. And I was like, yeah, I miss fat and I miss like salt and sugar and all these things. And called my sister back. She's like, oh, that only took you a week. Good for you. She's like, you need to do everything in moderation. And she's a big believer in like no processed food and just everything in moderation. If you've got to get your sugar fix in somehow, that's fine. But make sure it is in a small controlled amount. And so I haven't followed any other protocol nutritionally except for that. I will say when I first had my TBI, when I first was suffering, there were a couple of types of food that really I shut down. A lot of processed food, like hardcore processed food, I would completely shut down. Any bread, carbohydrates, like that kind of thing, I just shut down. Weirdly, like I used to love croissants, but to this day, croissants taste like cardboard to me still, which is kind of weird. I couldn't have peanut butter. There were certain things that just I was just so messed up. So I just started to focus on everything in moderation and just no processed food. How is my health and mental health before the TBI? So that is a really good question. So my health and my mental health, to me, it's all one big thing. It's all just health and wellness. I would have considered myself a healthy person. I practiced yoga. I was teaching yoga, meditation. I ate well. I have a very robust, like I said, I'm a mom. I'm a very robust family life, very close family. I've got like all these grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins all living around. But I will say, after suffering and getting hit over the head and having a TBI, this part of this reawakening was realizing that all of my health and wellness and mental health visions were coming from the outside in, and I wasn't thinking about myself from the inside out. And with the TBI and all the protocols that I found relief from allowed me to get much more in tune with my body and understand what was happening inside of me, and not just in the yoga sense of what's happening inside of me, but really being able to feel and understand my brain, understand what was going on. And so I am a much better, healthier person now, mentally and physically. But I did not suffer from any other issues prior. I kind of have a happy predisposition. I'm kind of happiness is my DNA, so I'm lucky that way. Although it's true with the TBI, there was definitely some days of irritability and days that I was not fit for society either. For sure. And I'm now using that phrase, not being fit for society. So thank you. Oh, lion's mane for MS patients. I like that. That's a good one. Listen, the question is starting microdosing on your own or with a therapist. I'm a child of a psychologist, so I will always defer to a partner in therapy first and foremost. And if you have a therapist who is open to the idea and understands the protocol and understands the intention and what the possibilities could be, I would always default to that first and foremost. At the time, I didn't have anybody like that. And I definitely didn't feel comfortable talking about it with anybody. So I did it on my own. But I also had a community of people that I could have a conversation with, who I could work with to microdose. And so I felt comfortable doing it on my own. I now feel much more comfortable having a doctor I can have a conversation with. Any specific tip for people that have, yeah, I think that if you have like I said, my default is with a therapist. But if you don't, just to have a partner that you can do this with, who will not be microdosing, who will be focused on you and your needs, just so they can partner with you on it. I think it's always better to have someone with you doing it. Again, it's all about intention. I kept a ridiculous journal. Some of it is gobbledygook, but some of it is really insightful. And I spent a lot of time quiet with it. I wasn't, especially when I first started microdosing, I definitely was quiet. Not that I wasn't talking to people about it, but that I was sort of internally focused. I'm a pretty extroverted person, but I spent a lot of time internally focused on me, what was happening, microdosing, and spent a lot of time like this. And so that's what worked for me. But I don't think that I don't know for sure, but I don't think that whether you had a TBI a while ago versus, me who had it. I mean, I don't know what a while is, Pamela. It's like mine was 7 years ago. So, and I just started microdosing like 2 years ago. So. Nine years ago. So yeah, similar. Do you have someone you can do it with? Do you have someone who you can work with, Pamela? She'll think about it. For a client. Okay, sorry. Oh, you have a TBI case. Sorry. Sorry. I read that wrong. Sorry, I got it. You have a case. Gotcha. Okay. Anything else?
Elana, your story is so inspiring.
Oh, thanks.
What's your next writing project? From Brian G?
Hey, Brian G. My next writing project is not in writing project at all. I am trying to storytell in a different way, film. So I think it's time that the story becomes a little more animated. So I'm working on putting something together in that arena. Yeah. It's a whole other budget. It's a whole other budget. It's a whole other skill set, but I'm up for the challenge. So we'll see. We'll see.
Do you see any promise in microdosing with other psychedelics such as ibogaine or say ayahuasca, wachuma? Have you heard
Yeah,
stories?
I
like that?
haven't, I haven't done anything. So, I can't speak to it from, personal anecdotes, but there have been many people around me who have and who feel very feel great about it. So I do feel like there's a lot of potential. Again, I feel like it all comes back to intention, and it all comes back to it's the same thing with cannabis. It's with intention and it's dosage and it's the setting. It really has to be incredibly in sync for it to work. Environment is really important. Dosage is like crazy important. Safety too. I will say though, the microdosing is happening faster than I thought it would. Like cannabis is taking longer to legalize and people get wrap around than psychedelics and healing. But maybe cannabis just pushed it a little faster.
Yeah, it does feel like it's expedited. Like cannabis was open that portal and that gateway, and now the rest of the medicines are falling after. And there's been so many studies happening with psychedelics even before they were illegal. So I just think
it's so much easier to get funding for psychedelic research than it is for cannabis research. It's like the craziest thing. And I was on this call today, on the Zoom today, and one of the researchers was saying there are more research projects funded about the ills of cannabis than there are about the therapeutics of cannabis, and there's more positive psychedelic research than non-positive. It's weird.
such an interesting agenda behind that.
Oh yeah, agenda behind everything.
So where can people find you and connect with you?
Well, I put my email in the chat there, so please definitely reach out to keep the conversation going. It's very easy. Elana Frankel at Gmail. Oh, there we go.
And so for people that aren't attending live and are watching the recording of this, you can find her on Instagram at Elana Frankel and Indigo and Haze.
Yep, Indigo and Haze is the website. Does your website have a newsletter? Brian G, Brian G, do you want to write my newsletter? I'm happy to have you do that because I don't have time and I really want to, and I think about it constantly and I have it written in my head. It's a hard no, but thank you, Brian G, for reminding me that it needs to go to the top of the list.
Thank you for all the work that you've done on yourself, all of the dedication to your healing, and for being such a beacon of light and inspiration to so many people that are suffering or on the healing path. It's truly amazing, and we're so honored to have you part of our organization, our meeting tonight. Thank you so much for taking the time to share with us.
Thank you all for your time. I appreciate you so much. This is a great group, a wonderfully open group. So thanks.
Thank you so much. You're just really so inspiring. I just love how accomplished you've been and the direction that you've taken your career. It's really so inspiring. Thank you.
No, thank you. I'm glad to share it. I'm glad that it's resonating with so many people, and I want to just keep the conversation going because there are so many people who are not only suffering but have similar needs, and I want to be able to share information and make sure people can connect with the right therapists and therapeutics. That's all I want. And obviously also to have a newsletter. Those are the things I want to.
And deep bow gratitude to everyone on this call and all of the dedication to the healing and all of the work everyone else is doing. Thank you so much for being here with us. And please join us for our monthly membership Campfire and many of our other offerings and events and free groups and circles on psychedelicsocietysf.org. And we're in the process of planning our microdosing movement masterclass, which is a follow-up and advanced class for those that are interested in microdosing, have already taken our previous course and are looking for a deeper dive. And we're going to be learning about some of the history of microdosing, which we're really excited about. There's a lot of research that's being done on the ancestral and indigenous use of microdosing that hasn't been discovered at all. And we're going to have the opportunity to learn about that. And this is not a new phenomenon, but we're just reintegrating it and reinstating it into the public consciousness. So we're really excited to learn all about that and share this information. And thank you again, Elana, for sharing with us tonight, for who you are and the beacon of light that you are. Much love,
Thank you all
everyone.
so much. Thank you all. Now I'm going to bed.
Thank you, Elana. Thank you, everyone.
Good night. Thank you so
Good
much.
night.
Good night, everyone.
I know.